This video is graciously sponsored by Factor. If you're like me, you're overworked and hooked on the instant gratification of takeout apps. Here's a solution that's good for you and your wallet. Get Factor instead. Not only is Factor far cheaper than takeout, but meals are ready far faster than restaurant delivery in just 2 minutes. No more anxiously checking for your delivery driver. These meals are conveniently ready when you are. And best of all, no post-meal guilt, as you're eating dietitian-approved, never-frozen food. In addition to full meals, you can replenish your snack supply with an assortment of 36 different sweets, smoothies, juices, and mini munchies. As a high school teacher and mother of 2, these meals are my saving grace when dinner time rolls around. No more stress and no more uncertainty, just quality, and can I mention yummy meals every time. Head to Factor75.com or click the link below and use code MERCDOCS50 to get 50% off your first Factor box. That's Factor75.com or click the link below and use code MERCDOCS50 at checkout to get 50% off your first box. Thank you again to Factor for sponsoring our video. Stephanie Stewart was an able-bodied 70-year-old woman who worked as a lookout observer for Alberta, Canada's Sustainable Resource Development Department during the summer of 2006. Also known as a fire spotter, Stephanie's position included watching for signs of wildfire, particularly smoke, during the wildfire season, which generally lasts from April to September, although it can vary year to year. Other duties include reporting local weather conditions several times per day, monitoring and recording radio relay transmissions from other nearby workers, and maintaining all buildings as well as outbuildings on the property. The job is known for being physically and mentally taxing, as those who have worked in the position say the quietness of the picturesque surroundings can be isolating, as many lookout towers are in highly remote areas. Stephanie was an experienced outdoorswoman who had previously climbed Mount Kilimanjaro and bicycled across Canada solo. She also had 18 years of experience as a fire spotter, which made her uniquely qualified for her position at that location. Stewart was stationed at the Athabasca Lookout Tower. 12 of her 18 years working as a fire spotter had been spent there. She spent her downtime at the lookout gardening, painting, embroidering, and reading. Alarms sounded when, on August 26, 2006, the co-workers of Stephanie Stewart started to worry as she had not called in the morning weather report to the main station, one of her primary job duties, which also connected her to the outside world. After repeated attempts to reach her were unsuccessful, a colleague was dispatched to her cabin at the Athabasca Lookout. Upon entering the small cabin, it was clear to her co-worker that a struggle had occurred. There was a smear of blood on the stairs leading up to the cabin, and the inside was in a state of disarray. Whatever fate befell Stephanie, it happened so quickly that the pot of water that she was boiling was still bubbling on the stove when her coworker arrived. Missing from the cabin were several blankets, a pillow, and a gold lady's watch. Stephanie was nowhere to be found on the lookout grounds. Authorities were immediately contacted, and an extensive search and rescue effort was performed, both in the wilderness and the surrounding Athabasca Lookout, with no results. Authorities have stated that they do not believe Stewart fell victim to an animal attack, although they are unable to concretely explain the smear of blood on the stairs. Her death has been ruled a homicide, and law enforcement seems sure that she was met with foul play. At this time, no further information about Stephanie Stewart's disappearance has emerged. There have been no clues nor leads in the case, and no remains have ever been found. Stewart's family and friends continue to hope for answers, but the case remains cold. If you have any information on the fate of Stephanie Stewart, you can call in tips by phone at 1-800-222-TIPS. That's 1-800-222-8477. Marie-Line Bergeron, born December 21, 1983, loved music from a young age. Growing up in Saint-Romuald, Quebec, Marie-Line's mother said that she was always trying to get a band together. Her parents recalled her as reckless, sometimes getting in trouble, and sometimes hanging out with friends who were bad influences. Those close to Marie-Line also said that she was open to and interested in all cultures and nationalities, as evidenced by her dual language mastery. She spoke English as well as her native language French with equal fluency. She also had learned a little Spanish and was beginning to learn Russian. After earning a degree in media arts and technology, she moved to Montreal in 2005. She worked at Steve's Music Store and did freelance sound editing. Friends recall that she had a Pegasus tattoo on the right side of her chest, which was as unique as she was. In December of 2007, friends and family were noticing signs that things were not going well in the then 24-year-old's life. A friend from college recalls that upon meeting up with Marilyn, she acted depressed and says that she was spending a lot of time listening to music in the dark. He described her as being very different from the smiling young woman he remembered. They attended a party together where she later became anxious after speaking to a friend and asked him to go home. Back at the apartment, her friend recalls that her mood further deteriorated and that Marilyn began crying. Quote, "She told me something had happened." He went on to say that he asked her if she had been hurt or something similar, and that all of her answers were, quote, "No, it's worse, it's worse." He asked her whether she'd witnessed a murder. She replied, quote, "You can't even begin to imagine what I've been through." The friend tried for several hours to get her to open up, but she would not. He got the impression that she did not want to put him in danger too. Marilyn told her family that she wanted to get out of Montreal because she no longer felt safe living alone. She told her mother that she would explain everything when she finally came home. On February 10th, 2008, the 25-year-old abruptly left her apartment and returned to her parents' house in Quebec City. Over the next 6 days, her family traveled twice to Montreal to move her out. They noted that she was visibly depressed. At one point, she even asked her sister if there was a light at the end of the tunnel. They repeatedly questioned her about what had happened in Montreal, but she would not talk. Marilyn denied that her problems involved drugs, debts, or a relationship, but when her mother asked if Marilyn had been hurt, her face allegedly took on a pained expression. On the morning of February 17th, 2008, Marilyn said that she wanted to go for a walk by herself. Her mother convinced her to stay a while for coffee. Her mother said, quote, "I was worried because she was in a precarious psychological state. She was anxious." Marilyn soon left after, promising to be back that afternoon. She was wearing a long black overcoat with gray fake fur trim and suede boots. She took no identification other than her credit card. Marilyn's handbag was left at home near the door, along with a brand new pack of cigarettes. Shortly after 11 a.m., Marilyn stopped at an ATM on Boulevard de Lomière in Loretteville and attempted to withdraw 60 Canadian dollars, a transaction which was declined. A security camera recorded this transaction. The Bergerons described Marilyn in this footage as appearing helpless. People familiar with the area have suggested that she may have been looking at a car that was parked on the street nearby. Curiously, Marilyn is also wearing a black backpack, which she was not carrying when she left the house. It is unclear what the bag might have contained or if any items were missing from the family home. At 4:03 p.m., Marilyn bought a cup of coffee at Café Depot, 12 miles south from her parents' house. The barista recalled that she was anxious to leave and seemed unhappy. She paid with her credit card. According to a witness, she was alone at the time. Investigators say that it would take between 4 to 5 hours to walk the 16 miles, which was the distance that Marilyn traversed that day. Because of this geographical fact, police seemed to think that Marilyn may have hitchhiked or gotten a ride from somebody, but no such person has ever come forward. The family was frustrated that police investigated the case as a disappearance without considering the possibility of criminal involvement. They have since made several requests to have the case formally transferred to the jurisdiction of the Montreal Police. Their requests have been denied. Investigative reporter Claude Poirier dedicated an episode of his TV series Poirier Enquête, or Poirier Investigates, to Marilyn. After it aired in 2010, a man called in, claiming to have seen Marilyn multiple times in the francophone community of Hawkesbury, Ontario. He believed that she had settled there with a younger man after moving houses several times. Regular customers at a Hawkesbury restaurant also said that they had seen her there with an older man. Marilyn spoke French fluently, so her relocation to a francophone region was a possibility. However, no trace of her could ever be found. Then, on a rainy night in December of 2009, an Hawkesbury resident and his wife were woken up at 2 a.m. by a woman knocking at the door. She wore only a light jacket, a white t-shirt, jeans, and high heels, unsuitable attire for the winter weather. She did not appear to be intoxicated, but looked, as they said, frail. Crying, she asked them if she could use their phone to call somebody. She made the call, but did not seem to get an answer on the other line. She asked the couple for directions to a nearby street. The man offered to drive her there, but she declined, saying it was close enough to walk. After apologizing for disturbing them, she left, just as mysteriously and dejectedly as she had arrived. 3 months later, the couple saw a news report about Marie-Line and said that they recognized her as the woman who had come to their house, except that she had been blonde rather than brunette. Marie-Line's family said that she sometimes did dye her hair blonde, showing pictures as proof. The husband of the couple surreptitiously visited says that he is 99.9% sure the woman was Marie-Line. The Bergeron family lawyer stated that over 20 credible tips placed Marie-Line in Hawkesbury in 2009. Other unspecified information has led the family to believe that she may still be alive and living in Ontario, Canada. Her family ruminates that if she truly wants to be alone, they respect her decision, but they're unsure whether she was met with foul play and therefore continue to search for answers. Scott and Amy Fandel, ages 13 and 8, were siblings living with their mother in Sterling, Alaska. On the evening of September 4th, 1978, Scott and Amy and their mother Margaret, along with Margaret's sister Kathy, who was visiting from out of town, went out to eat at a Sterling bar and grill called Good Time Charlie's. At around 10 p.m., Margaret and Kathy dropped the children off back at home and returned to Good Time Charlie's to have some drinks alone. After returning home, the children visited their next-door neighbors, the Luptons, with whom the children frequently played. The last confirmed sighting of the pair was when they were walking home from the neighbor's house. Later, at around 11:45 p.m., a passerby noted that the lights were still on within the Fandel house. After a long night out on the town, in the early morning hours of September 5th, between 2 and 3 a.m., the children's mother, Margaret, and the children's aunt, Kathy, later recalled that they returned to what anyone would have considered a strange scene, but to which they initially did not express consternation, possibly due to the fact that they had been drinking. The house was dark, which was unusual as the children were afraid of the dark. In the kitchen, a can of tomatoes had been opened, and a pot of boiling water stood on the stove, still boiling. In the evening, Scott frequently ate pasta with tomatoes for a snack before going to sleep. Scott and Amy were nowhere to be found within the house. Despite the obvious oddities of such a meal interrupted, Margaret and Kathy wrongly assumed that Scott and Amy were spending the night next door at the Luptons' house, and both women went to bed. Later that morning, Margaret recalls that after awakening and getting ready without seeing the children, she left for work as she usually did, at around 8:30 a.m. While she told police that she had not seen Scott and Amy, she said that she believed the children, as they usually had, followed their usual routine and had already left for school. At some point, Margaret says she attempted to call Amy at her school, but was told that Amy had not arrived that day. However, she claims that her boss prevented her from leaving work in order to investigate the absence further. At around noon, the kids' aunt, Kathy, awoke. She too believed the children were at school, and as such, she was not alarmed to find them not at home. It was not until later that afternoon, after the school day had ended, that Margaret and Kathy became aware that something was not right. By this time, it had been upwards of 12 hours since they had arrived home to the boiling pot of water, the opened can of tomatoes, and a lack of children. When the Lupton children from next door visited the Fandel home, wondering why Scott and Amy had not attended school that day, Kathy, confused, called Margaret at work and notified her of the children's absence from school. Margaret, now frantic, immediately notified the police that the children were missing, and a search ensued. She attempted to reach Amy's father, Roger, who had left the relationship and the family and moved away about 9 months prior. While she was not able to reach him directly, she was able to contact relatives of Rogers, who told her that the children's father said he had no idea where the kids were. While it was initially alarming that the mother of the children was unable to speak with the father directly, soon after, Roger arrived in person in Sterling, Alaska, to assist in the search efforts for the missing children. While investigating the children's disappearance, police found several bullet casings outside the Fandels' home. However, they were unsure if the casings were related to the disappearances. Years later, Roger's then-girlfriend offered to reveal the location of Scott and Amy in exchange for $5,000. This information was not revealed directly to the police, and it is unclear if it was ever told to the original witness, Roger's uncle. Police say that it is unclear if she actually had any information. Despite the fact that Roger was considered a suspect for many years, the police no longer consider him involved, although they do not say what piece of evidence has led them to this conclusion, and some close to the family disagree with such an assessment. This case is open and unsolved. If you have any information on the disappearance of these 2 children, please text the keyword AKTIPS followed by your information to 847411. Patrick Carnes, known as Pat by his friends, was 86 years old when he and his dog, named Lucky, left for a road trip on April 13, 2011. As was his habit, he was driving his green Subaru back to his hometown of Reno, Nevada, from Ohio, where he had been visiting his family. Despite his advanced age, the much-beloved man, known as Uncle Pat, was physically and mentally robust and frequently made the long trip. At around 9 p.m. that night, he was stopped and warned about an illegal lane change he had made while driving on the highway close to the town of Wells, Nevada. A former truck driver himself, it was unusual that Pat seemed to be following closely behind a tractor-trailer's rig, as evidenced by dashcam video taken by a state trooper. Upon being pulled over, Pat revealed to the state trooper that he had been following a trucker to get to the town of Elko because he did not like driving at night and did not know where the next town was. He also stated in the police interaction that Elko was where he intended to book a motel for the night. Authorities were unable to identify the specific rig which was in such close proximity, as it continued on its way after Pat was pulled over. That was the last time that Pat and his dog Lucky were ever seen again. 150 miles away, on I-80, near the Pumpernickel Valley exit, someone called the police the following morning to report an abandoned automobile near exit 205. There they found Pat's abandoned vehicle. Police say that the fact that the man's bags, wallet, and checkbook remained inside the vehicle ruled out a robbery. Police responded to Pat's 2 sons' phone call a few days later, reporting that their father was missing. Despite an extensive 600 to 700 hours of dog searches, ATV searches, and off-road Jeep searches, no trace of Uncle Pat or his loyal dog was ever found. Known to be staunchly anti-technology, Pat possessed no cell phone and chose not to use or even own credit cards. His absence of a digital footprint made it all the more difficult to track his whereabouts. Friends and family who worked in law enforcement joined in on the hunt, utilizing their extensive manpower to review traffic videos and interface with the case detective. However, no further evidence has ever been recovered, and police have not named any suspects. The remains of the man and the dog have never been located. If you have any information regarding this case, please contact the Elko County Sheriff's Office at 775-738-3421. In these uncertain times, a special thanks to all of our patrons for their continued support. You can find us on Patreon at patreon.com/Merc07 or just search Patreon Merc.